Iran does not normally tax all ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz in a legal international system. But during political or military tensions, Iran sometimes tries to force ships to pay fees for safe passage. Here is how it works in practice. 1. Why Iran has influence over the strait. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most important waterways in the world. About 20% of the world's oil passes through it. The strait is very narrow, about 21 miles/33 kilometers at its narrowest. It lies between Iran, north, and Oman, south. Because of this geography, Iran can monitor ships with its navy, missiles, drones, and coastal radar. 2. The idea of a security tax. Recently, Iranian politicians discussed imposing a security fee or transit tax on ships passing through the strait. The idea is simple. A ship wants to pass through the strait. Iran says, if you want safe passage, you must pay a fee. After payment, Iran allows the ship to pass without interference. Reports suggest some ships may have paid millions of dollars for safe transit in tense situations. 3. How Iran can enforce it. Iran cannot physically stop every ship, but it uses pressure and risk. Tools they use: naval patrol boats, anti-ship missiles, sea mines, drones, seizing ships, threats of attack. Because oil tankers can be worth $200 to $300 million, companies usually avoid risk. So many ships would rather pay or avoid the route. 4. Important. International law. Under maritime law, UNCLOS, the Strait of Hormuz is an international strait. Ships from all countries have the right of transit passage. So legally, Iran cannot officially charge a tax. But in war or crisis, power sometimes matters more than law. 5. The real strategy behind it. Iran uses the strait as a geopolitical weapon. By controlling or threatening the route, it can pressure the United States and allies, raise global oil prices, gain political leverage, force negotiations. This is why the strait is often called the world's most important oil choke point. White heavy checkmark. Simple summary. Iran cannot legally tax ships in the Strait of Hormuz, but during conflicts it may force ships to pay for safe passage by threatening attacks or blocking the route. Why the U.S. Navy cannot easily stop Iran from controlling the Strait of Hormuz, even though America has the strongest navy in the world. It's a fascinating strategy. Even though the United States Navy is the strongest naval force in the world, it is not easy for it to completely stop Iran from threatening the Strait of Hormuz. The reason is mostly geography, military strategy, and asymmetric warfare. Let's break it down clearly. 1. Geography strongly favors Iran. The Strait of Hormuz is very narrow and lies partly along Iran's coastline. Iran has hundreds of kilometers of coastline facing the strait. From the mountains and islands, Iran can deploy anti-ship missiles, radar systems, drones, naval bases. Because of this, Iranian forces can attack ships from land, which is harder to stop than attacks from ships alone. 2. Iran's swarm boat strategy. Iran's naval forces, especially the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, use a strategy called swarm tactics. Instead of large warships, they use dozens of small fast attack boats, armed speedboats with rockets, explosive drones, small submarines. If 50 to 100 fast boats attack a tanker or warship at once, even a powerful navy must react carefully. 3. Sea mines, very dangerous and cheap. Iran can deploy naval mines in the shipping lanes. Mines are a major threat because they are cheap to place, very expensive, and slow to remove. One mine can sink a tanker. During the tanker war in the 1980s, mines damaged several ships, including a U.S. warship. 4. Missiles from land. Iran has many coastal anti-ship missiles. From mountains and hidden launchers, they can strike ships passing through the strait. Even powerful aircraft carriers must stay far away to avoid missile attacks. 5. Oil markets panic easily. Another reason Iran has leverage. Global oil markets react very quickly to threats. Even rumors about closing the Strait of Hormuz can cause oil prices to jump. So Iran does not even need to fully close the strait. Just creating risk is enough to influence global markets. 6. Many countries depend on this route. Oil from these countries passes through the strait. Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, United Arab Emirates. If shipping stops, The world economy feels it immediately. White heavy checkmark in simple terms. Iran cannot defeat the U.S. Navy in a full war, but it can make the Strait of Hormuz extremely dangerous, which gives it strategic power over global oil trade. What would actually happen to the world economy if Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz for just 7 days? The effects would shock most people. If the Strait of Hormuz were closed for just 7 days. The impact on the world would be very serious. This narrow passage carries a huge amount of the world's energy supply. 1. Oil prices would rise very fast. Around 20% of the world's oil moves through the Strait of Hormuz. Countries exporting oil through it include Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, United Arab Emirates. If the strait closes, oil prices could double within days. Petrol prices around the world would rise sharply. Transport and shipping costs would increase. 2. Global markets would panic. Stock markets usually react quickly to oil supply threats. Countries that rely heavily on oil imports, like China, India, Japan, South Korea, would face serious supply worries. Many stock markets might drop sharply within hours. 3. Military tension would rise. The United States Navy and allied forces would likely move quickly to reopen the strait. Possible actions might include escorting oil tankers, clearing naval mines, destroying missile sites threatening ships, protecting shipping lanes. This could risk a direct military confrontation with Iran. 4. Gas supply problems. The strait is not only about oil. Qatar exports a large amount of liquefied natural gas, LNG, through the strait. If blocked, countries depending on that gas could face energy shortages. 5. Global inflation would increase. Because oil affects almost everything. Food transport costs increase. Airline tickets become more expensive. Manufacturing becomes more costly. This can cause inflation worldwide. White heavy checkmark. Simple conclusion. Even 1 week of closure in the Strait of Hormuz could cause oil price shock, global economic panic, military escalation, higher prices worldwide. That is why the strait is often called the most important oil choke point on Earth. Here's why Iran has never fully closed the Strait of Hormuz, even at the height of tensions with the United States. It's a mix of strategy, economics, and risk management. 1. Economic self-harm. Iran exports a large portion of its own oil and gas. Closing the strait would block Iran's own energy exports, hurting its economy immediately. Iran cannot survive long-term without selling oil. Even in a confrontation, total closure is costly to Iran itself. 2. Global military risk. While Iran has missiles, drones, and fast boats, closing the strait fully would almost guarantee direct military retaliation by the U.S. and allies. That could include airstrikes on Iranian ports, missile sites, and infrastructure. The risk of full-scale war is too high, so Iran prefers threats and partial interference instead of full closure. 3. Maximum leverage with minimum cost. Iran's real goal is strategic pressure, not destruction. Even a threat of closing the strait can spike oil prices. This hurts its adversaries economically without Iran suffering a full blockade. Sometimes Iran just harasses shipping, threatens, or stops selected tankers. This gives them more power with less direct cost. 4. International backlash. Closing the strait would violate international law. Unclose. Iran would face sanctions and global condemnation. It could lose support from allies who rely on safe shipping. By keeping the strait technically open, Iran avoids full isolation while still sending a political message. White heavy checkmark summary. Iran uses the Strait of Hormuz as a strategic threat lever rather than a weapon to destroy global oil trade. They rely on threats and selective disruption, economic and political pressure, avoiding self-harm and full-scale war. In short, it's about power and leverage, not closure. Obor Link News for All.